Hi, my name is Gabrielle. I reviewed the RCT on nutrition. It was an Action Against Hunger program on nutrition in Pakistan. To start just with a program description, so the population included in the trial were the poor and very poor, with children ages 6 to 48 months in several villages in Pakistan. And the families participated in Action Against Hunger program, which was a cash-based intervention. And cash-based intervention, what it did was either gave cash transfer, double cash, or food vouchers to the families participating in the group. And the double cash was just a cash transfer of twice the amount. And it was hypothesized that food vouchers, followed by the double cash and then the standard cash, would be most effective in reducing child wasting. So basically, once a month, the families were given either money or the food voucher. At baseline, at 6 months, and at 1 year, measurements were taken for child wasting after this intervention. And then the tests measured were weight for height Z-scores, wasting, stunting, hemoglobin levels, and anemia. And then it collected quantitative data, and then also qualitative data with focus groups and interviews. Afterwards, statistical analysis was done using this data software. So the findings consisted of that in the double cash group, odds ratio of being wasted were lower. And then also weight for height Z-scores were better in the double cash and fresh food voucher groups, but that was only at the 6 month and not the 1 year measurement. All intervention groups had lower odds of being stunted at both 6 months and 1 year, but then there was the unintentional result that the fresh food voucher group had a significant reduction in hemoglobin value, and that was not expected. So it was concluded that overall the program produced good results, and the amount of cash given was important to, it was significant to the amount of wasting, and the larger cash transfer caused less wasting. Overall, there were positive impacts on nutritional resilience, and then using the fresh food voucher had the unintentional results due to purchasing restrictions, which would need to be modified for the future because it reduced hemoglobin on average of amount of 2.6 grams per liter. So in terms of the findings of the analysis of the RCT, in terms of objectivity, I ranked every category on a ranking of 1 through 5, 1 being that the methodology is sound and had no issues, and 5 being that there are major problems and issues in the methodology. So first, the study wasn't blinded to either participants or researchers, which introduces the potential for bias. But the people who selected participants for interviews and the groups, the researchers that collected data were different. And every child that was measured for quantitative data was sampled. So there's no selection bias from researchers. Internal design validity, I gave a ranking of 3 to 5 because the study was relatively unstable and not uniform. In terms of sampling, there were imbalances between villages. The cash transfer group had higher attrition rates and lower SES and educational status. The study was only done in 1 farming district in Pakistan, and it was also began in the lean season of May through June, and a significant portion of that population was already wasted at baseline. It was 14.3% of the child population in question. There were difficulties in calculating hemoglobin in 1 village, but the quantitative measures that were tested allowed for relatively uniform collection. A problem, though, was that the double cash group had a smaller sample size, and it was unknown how much of the money was spent on the children and given out, and money was given out by different organizations. In terms of statistical validity, I gave a ranking of 1 through 5. I couldn't find any major problems with it, other than the fact that it was unclear how much of the money was used on children. Extra supplementation was given to kids who were extremely malnourished, but that was adjusted for during analysis. In terms of construct validity, I gave a ranking of 1 through 5 as well. CBIs are routinely used in this area as an intervention, and multiple levels of treatment and outcome measures were used. In terms of external validity, I gave a ranking of 3 out of 5 because conclusions couldn't be generalized due to only sampling the poor agrarian population, and again doing the testing in the lean season and only testing the poor people. Use of food vouchers was not generalizable, and minimum cash threshold wasn't determined, so it's unable to know if the intervention would work in other areas. Also, findings haven't been replicated by other studies yet. In terms of utilization, I gave a ranking of 2 out of 5 because the findings were published, but it was unclear if any groups or key stakeholders use this for future projects. Interviews showed the participants believed the program was helpful, and so did statistical results. And then it was hypothesized that the more money that was given, the less wasting there was be, but this was only true after 6 months. Also, the cash threshold amount, the minimum amount to reduce wasting, was undetermined, which was a major problem. So overall, problems and implications are that, again, food choices were restricted on vouchers. There were limitations in not being able to blind the study or measure differences between cash groups in terms of amount of food eaten, and collecting data was also difficult. The population was narrow, as mentioned before. One of the villages had a malfunction in equipment collecting hemoglobin. There was a smaller sample size for the double cash group. And then the employees had different amount of interaction with different community members. Assessments and recommendations consist of, overall, there was statistical conclusion validity and construct validity were strong, but the weaknesses occurred in terms of internal design validity and external validity. Considering the results, recommendations to be made include that there need to be more studies done to figure out how to double blind the study. Studies need to be done on a wider range of participants and not just farming poor people. And also minimize differences in terms of social determinants between groups receiving interventions. Also to standardize the amount of interaction between staff and villagers. It needs to be tracked the amount of money that went to the kids, how much extra food they received, and exactly what was purchased, and to try and standardize the supplemental amounts of food. Sample sizes of groups need to be standardized regardless of how much money was received, and the same collection tools need to be used with same effectiveness in all districts. It shouldn't be that measurements are taken, most of the measurements are taken during lean season. Instead, measurements should be taken at more regular intervals. Other interventions need to be tested other than food vouchers because not all food sellers accept vouchers. Also, research results should be showcased because the program was deemed to be effective. So key stakeholders should be reached out to in order to expand the program and continue it. Because the CBI was determined to be effective. Further programs also, significantly further programs really need to determine exactly how much amount in terms of money should be given in order to have optimal effects against wasting. And then these were just the references that were used.